This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
When I first heard our guest this week some 20 years ago, I honestly thought he was radical, almost nuts. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert, but since then I have come to learn that he is actually right about, the history of Israeli-Arab relations in the Middle East. He is made Aliyah as a teenager, and he has spent all of his adult life in Israel. He has espoused some very unpopular views because his views are inconvenient to the official narrative, which is that the Israelis are bad, they're colonizers, they're oppressing the poor Palestinian Arab neighbors who are justified in taking action against the Israelis by any means necessary to fulfill the chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Well, as I have said before, that is a really ironic statement because the last thing Hamas wants is a free Palestine. They want Palestine under the control of their leadership, which would not be shall we say, not democratically elected. There have not been elections in the Palestinian-controlled or the Arab-controlled sections of Gaza or Judea and Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank, since about, 2006, 2007? Anyway, we had the opportunity to sit down and hear from him his basically a masterclass in the history of what's going on in the Middle East, in Israel in particular, both historically and what he expects to come in the near future during our solidarity mission to Israel. This was during the first week in May. And by the way, we are planning another one for November. If you are brave and want to see with your own eyes what's going on over there without the filter of the corporate media here in the West, I'll tell you how to do that after this talk. But now we will take you back to the Prima Kings Hotel in Jerusalem, May 2024. We had the opportunity to sit and hear from the one and only AI Lipkin.
I've been here since March of last year, and I was planning to go back to the States in October, and I had a ticket. And so guess what? Looks like God wanted me to stay home. And I have this thing here. And my wife and I are both 75, and we live in a beautiful little community called Kedar, which is about 20 minutes from the Dead Sea. And we're surrounded by about 100,000 Arabs. And especially now that things are heating up with Lebanon, there's no army. The army's in the north, the army's in Gaza. And so our little community of 200 has, I can't say how many, but a few handfuls of volunteers who live in the community. But we're on our own. My son Aaron lives in a much bigger community. It's about 700 families instead of 200. And they are on their own also. All the communities in Judea and Samaria are now on their own. And we have people on the left side of the political spectrum that are saying that we have to kill 50,000 Jewish settlers in Judea and Samaria to teach the right-wing people a lesson, and so that we can return the land to the Palestinians and give them a Palestinian state. And these are the fifth column of President Biden. Wow. So Netanyahu has a number of problems. He has the socialist political forces that have been in place for over 100 years with a stranglehold on the political situation. All our generals are socialists. You cannot become a general in the Israeli army if you're not a socialist. Yesterday there was a scandalous firing of a general called General Winter, and they can't find one scandal in his record. He's a perfect general. And so now the rumor is that they're going to throw out the Gallant. Gallant is the Minister of Defense, and bring in Winter to replace him. 80% of the Jews who belong to the right wing, which is us, want Winter to be the Secretary of Defense. And my son said to me today, he said, "What Secretary of Defense? He should be the Prime Minister." Because at some stage, Netanyahu has to retire, at some stage. So I think it's fair to say that that is the update today. Now I can go. Now, what I want to do is I want to give some history. How long are you guys with jet lag, or are you past the jet lag?
No, we're fine.
Okay, because I can go for an hour, 2 hours. You know, I'm a Pentecostal Jew. So I could go for 3 hours. Once I was invited by a Messianic group. I was in Dallas in the middle of the winter. So 5 o'clock, the Sabbath is over on Saturday. So I got there at 7 and I preached until 12. Nobody left. It was 5 hours. Anyway.
Is that a diss on your long-windedness or our ears?
Nobody left. Nobody left. And
we didn't in 2003 either. 3 of us women were left standing and you were still talking.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah.
By the way, my brother, rest in peace, who died at 61 from cancer, and I love him and I miss him like crazy, said, "These Christians are all crazy. They pay you to talk, they should pay you to shut up." Only your brother can say that. And I miss him dearly. Anyway, okay. So what I have to tell you, and I have to go back a little bit into my family history. And if you're not in a rush, if this were a Baptist church, I'd have 20 minutes because after 20 minutes the pot roast burns, and the women won't talk to the pastor anymore. So 20 minutes. But here we can talk freely. And the moment you guys decide that you've had enough, kind of like start blinking the lights, and I'll know that it's time to cut.
Derek's battery dies.
Huh?
When the battery on the phone dies.
How long does your battery last?
Probably a couple hours.
Okay.
It's full charge, so.
You will see when it's getting weak, right?
Yeah.
So give me like okay. Yeah, there she went to play hooky on us, so it's good that she's here.
We started without.
Yeah, I'm just telling silly little things here before we get started. The rabbi always says, before I speak, I'd like to say a few words. So I've been saying a few words. Just to give you an idea of why I say what I say before I start saying it. My grandparents were from Russia, Poland. And around 120 years ago, they left Russia, Poland, and they went to Argentina. My parents were born in Poland in the US, but then they went to Argentina. So my parents grew up speaking Spanish, and Spanish is my mother tongue. And but I was born in New York, so I'm an American, with Spanish as my mother tongue, Spanish and English. Then my parents wanted me to learn Hebrew, go to Hebrew school, so I learned Hebrew. Then I decided I liked to study languages. My parents wanted me to be a medical doctor, but I didn't want to be a medical doctor. I'm not a good Jewish boy. By the way, you know what the definition of a rabbi is? A good Jewish boy who could not stand the sight of blood. So he becomes a rabbi instead of a doctor. Okay. So in college, I studied Russian, Arabic, and Greek because I love languages. I just, love history. I love human beings. I love everything. And just to give you a little idea, the Jewish people, in addition to having been blamed for being Christ killers, and that the Jews did not kill Christ, but were blamed for it and killed for it, and the Jews were taken out by the Romans and scattered all over Europe, and my family was scattered to Germany and later to Poland and Russia, and because I love history, so I study all this history. And I studied Christianity. Then I met my wife, and she's from Egypt, so I study Islam. So I studied all these different systems and the interrelationships between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And lo and behold, I come to the realization that Judaism and Christianity are a unit. Now, I know a lot of Christians don't like to hear that Judaism is like Christianity and Christianity is like Judaism. And definitely a lot of rabbis don't like to hear it. But when I study Islam, I see why it is so. I have to give you a little bit of my family history to understand how also I've come to these realizations. As you probably know, many Jewish people who were living in Spain for over 2,000 years, when they were kicked out of Spain by the Catholic Church with the Muslims, who were our best friends at that time, not such good friends, but the best friends, many of the Jews of Spain, including my wife's family, went to Morocco and Turkey. Now, Morocco was part of the Turkish Empire at that time. And the Turks were preparing for a fourth Islamic invasion of Spain. And the Jews who had fled from Spain or were kicked out of Spain, they still had the keys to their houses in Toledo and other places, and were getting ready to go back and kick the Catholics with the Turks on their side. So the Christians of Spain, Portugal, France did not like the Jews because we were with the Muslims. Many of the Jews went to Turkey. So the Turks, it was like a gold mine for them because the Jews helped the Turkish Empire in all its daily activities. Jews served in the military of the Turks. And Jews were in what eventually became Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, what it was Yugoslavia, all the way to Hungary, the Black Sea. And my mother's family went from Germany to Poland. And the Jews in Poland were the right-hand people of the king of Poland, who was a Catholic. And eventually what happened was, I'm making a very long story very short. The Russians destroyed Poland, so the Jews were persona non grata because they were with the king of Poland. And the Jews were hated because the Russians went down to the Black Sea. And the Jews of the Turkish area who were Sephardic Jews. So no matter where the Jews went, they were hated because they were always on the wrong side of history. It wasn't just being Christ killers, it was the wrong side of history. And you really can't judge them because if the Jews lived with the Polish king for 500 years, there was something good about the Poles. That is until later when the Catholic Church came in and ruined everything. I hope there are no Catholics here. Actually, I love the Catholics very much, and I've got so many jokes about Catholics, you wouldn't believe it. So I grew up in a thoroughly paranoid synagogue in New York, which is supposedly liberal, that all Christians are bad. All Christians hate us. Even the American, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, those who came from England, you know, Oliver Cromwell brought the Jews back to England after the Catholics kicked them out. So Catholics kicked us out after the pogrom of York, I think it was 1140, and the Jews came back, I think, in 1550 from Holland to England, then to America. And, but the Jews are very cliquey people. And even though Christians did not kill us in America, we still hated them because, rest assured, one day they would kill us too. Because everybody killed the Jews. And the Muslims killed, everybody killed the Jews. So as I grow up, I am thoroughly brainwashed in many, many different directions about the word paranoia. And I have to think about who is the real enemy, and it isn't the Christians, it's the Muslims. And how does 14 million Jews in the world defeat or defend itself from 1.5 billion Muslims? Well, there's a group out there that believes in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They believe in the Bible. And for heaven's sakes, the Messiah is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. Is it the first coming or second coming? I have a feeling we're going to find out pretty soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amen.
So I had a mother who was a communist, my mother wanted to go to Spain to fight Franco in the Spanish Civil War. Then she started dating my father, and he said, you have to choose me or Franco. So my mother chose my father, so she didn't go to Spain to fight Franco. My mother's brother wanted to go to Poland to fight the Nazis. My grandfather locked the door when the Polish embassy people came in Buenos Aires to my grandfather's house. But I succeeded in fleeing New York and coming to Israel 56 years ago. And I'm very glad that I did. I mean, I miss Long Island, I miss pastrami sandwiches, but I'm happy to be in Israel. And my children, including Aaron, who is happy to go to the States, you know, for Lipkin tours and mobilized groups and everything, but he's always happy to get home to Israel. And after 4,000 years of existence, we Jews are very fortunate to have survived all this crazy stuff and to be living in this Jewish state of Israel, which is also a pretty crazy thing with all the struggles that we have in Israel with the left and the right and all these things. And I mean, I personally should have been dead many times, traffic accidents and sicknesses and all kinds of stuff that happened to me. And, you know, our lives are like the batting of an eyelid. And so I'm very pleased still to be alive. My wife hasn't killed me. That's pretty good. Oh, and I didn't mention my wife. I meet my wife. She's from Egypt. And she speaks Arabic. And when I met her, this is going to be the last of my funny stories, you know, then I get into the real, but the funny stories all connect with what's really going on. And I belong to a very nationalist Jewish youth group called Beitar. And Beitar, you know, the Germans had the brown shirts and the Italians had the black shirts. We were the blue shirts. Our uniforms were New York City police officer shirt, dark blue shirts with a light blue tie. And I get on a bus, the bus stop right here, next to this hotel. It was the 14th of January, 1970. You know, men never forget the day they got married or the day that they got engaged. I remember the day I met my wife, and I remember the hour, and I remember the place. I get on the bus, and these Argentine communists who had fled from the fascist generals in Argentina start cursing me, these communists, and I turn around and my eyes fall on my wife-to-be. She's not from Argentina, she's from Egypt. And Spanish is my mother tongue, Argentine Spanish. So I started yelling at her in Argentine Spanish. She says, I know something's going on here, I'm not part of it. We study in the Ulpan, you know, we study Hebrew together. I said, where are you from? I'm from Egypt. I said, really? Are there any Jews in Egypt? She says, yes, we're the last Jews to leave. I said, well, can I interview you? Because I was editor of an English language newspaper. She says, sure. So I end up carrying her bags to her dorm room and we get married. It took 2 years, but we got married. And so we sit down and I say, make me a cup of coffee. So she puts out a spread on the table like you wouldn't believe how much food she put out on the table, you know, like. And so I take out my pad and I start writing, okay, let's start the interview. She says, wait a second. Before you interview me, I want to ask you a question. Are you crazy? She sees this guy with a dark blue uniform with a funny cap, like an Air Force cap, and like, why did you leave America? And I said to my wife, because the Goyim hate us. How many people know what the word Goyim is? Oh, yeah. Goyim means Gentile. Now in America, in 1968, when I came here, you were either a Jew or you were a Goy. Goy in America at that time referred to Christians. Very pejorative term. Goy means the nation, or a member of the nation, not the Jewish nation. Goy means the nations, who were not at Mount Sinai, who did not have the revelation of the Ten Commandments. And I said to her, because the Goyim hate us. So she said, Goyim? Who are the Goyim? I said, the Christians. Because in America, you're a Jew or you're a Goy. She says, you know, not only are you crazy, you also don't know anything. We've been married 56 years. Every discussion is you're crazy, you don't know anything. Can you imagine? Do you understand why I'm here tonight? who prepared me for all this. So she said to me, you have to understand something. Jews and Christians, you know Romans 15?
Yeah.
That the Christians are grafted into the olive tree.
Yes.
Jews are the roots, Christians are the branches. My wife teaches me this because she went to a Christian school with Christian girls, and this is, what she learned. She said the Muslims, they're good people, like any other human beings, but they have another God. Their God is Allah, the moon god, the war god, the sword god. He don't like no Jews and he don't like no Christians. So it cannot be the God of the Jews and the Christians. And they don't like themselves. Islam is the greatest depopulation system in the world. And when they say Allahu Akbar, means Allah, not God is great. Allah is greater. Greater than whom? Than the God of Israel, of the Jews and the Christians.
Right.
And Islam believes you kill the Jew on Saturday. My wife was telling me, she didn't even make me coffee yet. And she says, kill the Jew on Saturday, kill the Christian on Sunday, the Hindus and the Buddhists any day, the blacks any day, and then the Muslims kill each other any day. Now, when they say Allahu Akbar, they're saying Allah is greater. Who said he was greater than God before his fall from heaven? Satan. But Allah cannot be greater than God until everyone in the image of God is destroyed. Islam is the greatest depopulation system in human history. This is the ultimate battle between God and Satan. And 9 people that are here now, out of all of Jerusalem, are hearing this message. And I share this message everywhere and every time I can. But I don't know who knows the message. Okay. And so, I always listened to my wife, but it took me 20 years before I understood what she was saying. 20 years. 20 years later, I was 40. And I was fired from the Prime Minister's office illegally. And because they said, we know your political views, that you are right wing. They fired me. And this Christian lady in San Antonio says, oh, you all come to Texas. And she set up, that's how it all started in November of 1990. I've been in churches 35 years. I feel like Joseph. I was kicked out of my own land by my own people, and I ended up in the new Egypt, which was United States. See, all of this is important in order to understand where we are right now, because America is changing. Europe is changing, and there's a reason for it, and there's an answer to it. And praise God, I've been in over 1,000 churches all over the world, mostly US, of course, US, Canada, Europe. And on the one hand, I'm very frustrated that the big mega churches never invite me. And the reason is because they would collapse if they invited me. Because you have the anti-Semites who hate Jews, you have people who love the Muslims, you have people who are anti-conservative. The liberal churches would never have me. I've been in a few nice-sized churches, like especially in California. And they said to me, Avi, you cannot be here because most of our people are liberals. And I even go to rabbis from Chabad, and they say, our biggest donors are liberal Jews. So I cannot speak. This is a very big moment for me that you're taping me. And you've got to get it out all over the world. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to talk about the most important testimony in my life until now. My most important testimony is something that happened to me at the very beginning of my lecture circuit in Texas. I had spoken in San Antonio at a bar mitzvah. And there was a Jewish lady there, it was a PR woman. She heard me speak. She says, boy, you're a good speaker. I've got something for you in Dallas when you come back. What was it? The Dallas Council on World Affairs. In other words, she's Jewish. She doesn't work with Christian groups. She works with Dallas Council on World Affairs, which is the globalism, the one world government. Now, what happened was she heard me speak about Saddam Hussein. My very first visit to the U.S. was in November, December of 1990. This was a period called Desert Shield. It was before Desert Storm. I went back to Israel for Desert Storm, and we were hit by 39 Scud missiles. And only one person was killed because that one person refused to go into the what's it called? Not the bunker, the shelter, air raid shelter. Came back a few months later, April 1991, and this Jewish woman calls me, says, get on the next plane to Dallas. You're speaking tomorrow before the Dallas Council on World Affairs. My Christian lady friends, the one who got me started, Nancy, she says, you better be careful. These people can kill you if they don't like what you say. I said, you Christians are all paranoid. What does it mean they can kill you if they don't like what you say? Remember my words. Anyway, well, obviously they haven't killed me until now, you know. So I go, and I suppose you all know that God has a tremendous sense of humor. This was in April 1991. Now, what's March, April for the Jewish people? You have a holiday called Purim. And what's the story of Purim? You have a drunk king by the name of Achashverosh who beheaded his wife Vashti because she wouldn't strip naked for his court. And I mean, the guy was a complete jerk. If you know the history, the Greeks destroyed, his name was Artaxerxes, in Achashverosh, in Hebrew, Artaxerxes. Why did they bring me to the Dallas Council on World Affairs? Because they had a cancellation. Their speaker was Boris Yeltsin from Russia. And he had a little bit to drink, and they put him on a plane straight to a sanitarium in Russia. They had paid for 4 nights at a very expensive hotel in Dallas. The third night, he spoke twice. Third night was a washout. And the fourth night was Avi Lipkin. So firstly, God had to make Boris Yeltsin drunk so the door would open for me. Then I get there, and my name is Avi, capital A, Lipkin, A. Lipkin. And when I got there, they said to me, General Latham from the Council on Foreign Relations says to me, so tell me, sir, what's it like to be a general in the Israeli army? And I said, General? Aren't you General A. Lipkin? You see, the chief of staff of the Israeli army was Amnon Lipkin. They thought they were getting the chief of staff. But you know, for people from Dallas, Amnon, Avi, it's all the same. So God has a sense of humor. But when they found out I wasn't chief of staff, they said, you better do a really good job. I said, leave it to me. And you know what? They invited me back. I did such a good job as a speaker. And I'll explain why in a moment. Anyway, I had this map, and I started explaining to them things about why Israel cannot budge from its borders, its new borders, why it cannot go back to the 1967 borders. Because the country is not viable. You cannot defend the country. Even now, President Biden is talking about a Palestinian state. He's talking about a 2-state solution. Look at the map. The blue along the coast is the narrow waistline of Israel. This narrow waistline of Israel is about 9 miles. Have you been to San Francisco? You know the Oakland Bridge? The Bay Bridge?
Yes, oh yes.
9 miles. That's the size of Israel.
Oh my gosh.
We cannot defend ourselves. 9 miles, I mean, I don't know, you guys who are from Australia or Kiwis or South Africa or US or wherever, Israel is very small. Israel cannot be defended unless we are on the Jordan River or in the Golan Heights. And I explained it to them in minute detail. There were 200 people at the dinner, and 20 of them were very, very rich Muslims who did not walk out. They listened, you know. It was a very interesting evening from the army spokesman's point of view. Then after I spoke, we had dinner. After we had dinner, I put on my coat. I was about to leave. And General Latham says, where do you think you're going? We're not finished with you yet.
Oh.
And I'm telling you, this is the most important testimony of my life. So they said, so I sat down. It was a small group of 20 people, the richest people in Texas. You know, Texas people, some of them are very rich. You look at their shoes, the men's shoes, how they shine. You can be blinded by the shoes of the very rich Texas men. The Arabs are also very, very elegant. You can tell that people are very rich. And said, you know, Avi, you're a good speaker for Israel. You know why? Because you were born in America. You don't speak with a funny Israeli accent. We understand everything you're trying to say to us. You know, so he said to me, we don't like Jewish accents from Israel. We don't like Russian accents like Boris Yeltsin. We don't like Arabic accents. And even Queen's English from London, we don't like Queen's English either. You know, Texans don't like accents. And they have the funniest accent. They have the funniest accents of everybody. But you have a problem. You don't know reality. Reality number one, what made America great was the barrel of oil. The steady price of oil, steady supply of oil. Who was president in April 1991? George Herbert Walker Bush, the father. Oil, money. I mean, this is a globalist organization. Yeah. And the second thing they said to me, Israel is going to withdraw back to the 1967 borders. We don't care, because I explained to them, we gave Sinai 91%, we gave the Golan 2%, we gave Gaza 2%. We're only left with about 3 or 4% of the land before 1967. You're going to give all the land to the Arabs. And we don't even care. I said, if we give the land back, you know, we are committing suicide. This is what Bibi Netanyahu is saying to Biden. We can't commit suicide. We had a Holocaust already once. I said to them, are you saying we're going to have a Holocaust? I said, yes. And so I told them about the ship, the St. Louis. How many people heard of the ship, the St. Louis? See, St. Louis is a classic example of how the State Department contributed to the deaths of 6 million Jews in World War II. The St. Louis was a German Nazi passenger ship, a liner, and it left Bremen in Germany with over 900 Jewish refugees with legal German passports to Cuba. They had visas to enter Cuba. The ship arrived in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba, and nobody was allowed off the ship because the State Department told the dictator, Batista, who was a loyal ally of America, not to let the Jews off the ship. Turn the ship around, send it back to Germany. The ship steamed by Florida, and the Coast Guard made sure to it that no Jews could jump ship. The ship continued north past the Canadian Maritime, and there was a petition by pastors from Canada to allow the Jews to get off the ship. No deal. Well, let the children off the ship. No deal. One Jew is one Jew too many. By the way, Canada, and I'm not against minorities, you know that Canada is filling up with all kinds of minorities from all over the world. Can you imagine how powerful Canada would have been if it had taken in 6 million Jews? The economy of Canada and the development. Instead, they take everybody else, but not the Jews. The Jews, that ship, the St. Louis, returned to Belgium, Antwerp, because the war had broken out. The ship did not go back to Germany. It let them off in Antwerp, and then maybe 100 or 150 succeeded in escaping, and the rest were taken to a concentration camp and killed by the Nazis. This is the US State Department. This is 1939. There's no Jewish state. Why did Franklin Delano Roosevelt refuse to help save the Jews? And all they needed was just a place to go. Canada, Cuba, US, South Africa, Australia. But there was an international blockade of the Jews. January 1942, there was the Wannsee Conference in Berlin, in which the Nazis said, hey, no countries will take the Jews. We have to kill them with gas. And this is all thanks to President Roosevelt. Okay. What I'm trying to do is to point a picture of the State Department. This is the US State. The US State Department is totally anti-Semitic. 1948, after the Holocaust, the State Department, George Marshall, says to Ben Gurion, we do not agree with a Jewish state. Ben Gurion said, I don't care. We have to create the Jewish state. The State Department was against. 1956, the Egyptians closed the Straits of Tiran, and the Israeli military, together with the British and French, form a coalition against Egypt, and the British and the French retake the Suez Canal, which had been nationalized by the Egyptians, and the Jews liberated the Straits of Tiran because the Egyptians shut off the straits to Jewish ships. That's casus belli. Eisenhower said to Israel, withdraw. We will be guarantors of your security. And the deal was that if Egypt ever shuts off the Straits of Tiran again, the US Sixth Fleet will go in and open them up. Israel, rely on the US, we'll take care of you. 67, the Egyptians shut the Straits of Tiran again. The same Abdel Nasser. And we had something that very many Israelis didn't understand what was going on. There was something called 3 weeks of waiting. The Israelis were waiting. We were also digging trenches in Tel Aviv and digging mass graves because the Egyptians were going to wipe us out. And we're waiting for the Americans to come to save us. And finally, after 3 weeks, we call the State Department and we say, hey, listen, we got this piece of paper signed by the U.S. military and president that you're going to defend us. And the State Department's answer after 3 weeks is, we've been looking and looking. We can't find the agreement anywhere. And then came the Six-Day War because the Israelis said, we can't rely on the Americans. Then there was another story. How many people remember the ship Liberty? Yeah. The Liberty, and this is one thing Israelis don't like to talk about. But I think now with President Biden and the progressives, we've got to talk about it. Six-Day War, I don't have it on the map because the map is too small here. The Israeli army takes Sinai in 3 days. We have a very small army. We still have a very small army. And 3 days, and then they take the whole Israeli army from Sinai and they send them to the West Bank to fight the Jordanians. 2 days later, we have the West Bank, this area here. That's 5 days. And with the last day of the Six-Day War, we take the same army and we send them up to the Golan Heights to fight the Syrians. Six-Day War, we defeat all the Arabs. The Liberty, now Lyndon Johnson claims he didn't know about the ship. The Liberty was an NSA ship, the National Security or whatever it is, agency. After Israel took Sinai, Israel withdrew the entire army to fight the Jordanians. So the NSA was sending messages to the Egyptians, the Jews have pulled out of Sinai, go back and retake it. Oh. Now, you didn't know this?
No, I didn't.
Was it worth your while to hear what I'm saying tonight?
Well, all of this is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the Israelis strafed the ship. And I think 20 sailors were killed, and everybody hated Israel for doing it. Yeah. We could have sunk the ship if we wanted to. The ship should have been sunk.
Yes.
But the strafing was to teach a lesson. But the lesson I'm sharing today is that there are people in the United States military and in the State Department, they're anti-Semitic.
Intelligence communities too.
Intelligence communities. Okay. Anyway, so the story, I didn't finish the story about Dallas Council on World Affairs. So after they said to me that what made America great was the barrel of oil, and Israel will withdraw to the borders of 67, because the only thing that made America great was the barrel of oil. I had been to a fundraiser dinner for, do you know Zola Levitt?
Yes.
Not Zola Levitt, also Zola Levitt. Zola Levitt. There was a Christian couple, Gustafson. I don't think you'd know them, but they were benefactors, you know. And they had invited me to dinner, a fundraiser for KVTT Radio, which was Marlon Maddox. Did you know Marlon Maddox?
I didn't know him, but Tom Horton used to talk about him all the time.
So I was on Marlon Maddox in 1990. So when I had my meeting in April, I invited them as my dinner guests and their daughter and son-in-law. And not Marlon Maddox, Eric Gustafson gets up, the benefactor. He looks at everyone in the room. He says, "You call yourselves Christians? You say that what made America great was the barrel of oil? You should be ashamed of yourselves. What made America great was not the barrel of oil. What made America great was Jesus Christ." Now, I'm a Jew. I'm the only Jew in the room. You could cut the air with a knife or a sword. The spiritual battle between the Mammon people and the Jesus Christ people. And then his daughter got up and says with her Texas accent, says in the Bible, "Those who bless Israel are blessed, and those who curse Israel are cursed."
Ooh, good for her.
And she sat down. And that night taught me on which side I have to be. And so I made an oath that I would work with the Christians, because the Christians are not our best friends. The Christians are our only friends. This is the most important testimony of all my testimonies. Okay, so now I have a really interesting story for you. I have to kind of muffle it a little bit, not to get the pastor in trouble for telling me the story. Pastor hears my story about Dallas. He says, "I got a story for you." And he says, "I was a submariner in the Navy," not a pastor, just a Christian submariner. And I was on the conning tower. You know, these nuclear submarines have a very small conning tower. So he was on the conning tower with the captain of the submarine. Beautiful day, clear blue skies. All of a sudden, out of nowhere comes a giant wave, a rogue wave. And there was no time to get down into the submarine and close the hatch. So they have a what do you call it? I'm forgetting my English, or I'm just tired. A practice. They have a
Drill.
They have a drill. When something like this happens, the captain, who has to be on top, holds on with his life to the bars, his feet in his arms, and the sailor lies down on top of the hatch, and he also has bars where he locks himself into position. So the submarine flips over a few times, but the seawater does not go in and turn the batteries crazy, because the batteries in contact with seawater, everyone dies, from the poisoning. So the captain wanted to promote the sailor for officer school. But before you go to officer school, you have to go through the loyalty test. And the loyalty test was as follows. What would you do if you were given orders with the submarine to launch a nuclear attack at Tel Aviv? And he started laughing. He said, "What? Yes, you heard me, attack Tel Aviv." And he's laughing. So the captain says, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "Well, praise God, I'm a Christian. And God would never allow that to happen. It's not in the Bible. And secondly, I wouldn't want to be on that submarine, because God would destroy the submarine."
Right.
They threw him out of the Navy.
Oh my goodness.
And 3 other guys on the submarine are also pastors. They were all sailors on the submarine. You have to understand something. When I drive in my van around the US and Canada, I mean, I can sit with you guys for hours and just tell you stories and stories. It's in my books. And I'm not a spy, but people come up to me and say, we have to tell you such and such and such. We're Christians. We have to tell you such and such and such. Then he tells me that the captain of the submarine became the commander of the 6th Fleet. The 6th Fleet is the fleet off the coast of Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. So many times when I go to bed at night, I think of the 6th Fleet off the coast of Tel Aviv, and if Netanyahu does not do what Biden tells him, okay. Then it's not over. The head of the 6th Fleet retires from the Navy, which is a nice thing to do. And he converts to Islam, and he becomes the CEO of a Saudi corporation. And these people are in a position to launch a nuclear strike at Tel Aviv. This is my life. This is what I'm picking up every day in my travels. These are all in my books. So what you see little by little is that there has to be a God for Israel to survive. And also, if you're a Christian, these Antichrist people hate your guts. Every day that goes by, I am more and more convinced that the Jews and the Christians need to wake up. Do the Jews wake up? No, I'm trying to get onto TV here in Israel. They won't have me. Because we hate the American Jews, because they're different. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the people in the Israeli TV. They hate the American Christians. Hey, we got 2,000 years of hatred. Mm-hmm. Why did I found the Judeo-Christian Bible Block Party? To stop this stupid hatred. Because either we hang together or we hang separately.
Yes.
Amen.
Okay. So now I go over to a slightly different subject, but everything connects. I was always fascinated by Russian, Sovietology. And I studied Russian at New York University. I studied Russian here in Israel. And I was never a communist. I would say that if I had to choose something, I'd probably be a fascist. But I love the Russian uniforms. Mm-hmm. I love the Russian propaganda. And they're like Nazis, the way they march and everything. And American military, they don't really march. You know, they kind of like they walk, you know. Mm-hmm. But I like the martial music and the marching. And I wasted an hour this morning watching the victory parade in Moscow. And this stupid Putin killed 300,000 of his own kids. I can't understand it. And the Russians love it. The Russians love to die for the dictator. Okay. And my first visit to Israel was in 1966. I moved here in 68, but my first visit, I studied Hebrew, 66. And it was part of the Jewish Agency program. I never really understood what was behind everything, but it was, Jewish Agency is socialism. It was the socialist movement before the creation of the state. And they had a 6-week Hebrew ulpan to study Hebrew. And I stayed in a home with an Israeli family, but they were Russians. Everything was Russian. The music was Russian, the movies were Russian, everything was Russian. And I go back to New York, and I'm president of the Ruski Club, the Russian club. And they gave me a budget, and I was bringing in all these Russian propaganda movies from World War II. I loved it because I loved seeing Russian soldiers running with the bayonets and fighting. We hated the Germans, so this was, you know, a very natural thing. And I always have this thing, Russia, Israel, Russia, Israel, Russia, Israel. And there I am with my blue uniform and light blue tie. I go to Israel, I get off the plane, and they look at me and say, "You're a marked man." Because if you're a right wing, there's nothing for you in Israel. You have to be a socialist. And everybody was saying to me, Avi, you got to stop this stuff. You got to be a socialist to get ahead with it. I studied in 3 years at the Hebrew University. I was getting arrested all the time, for my activities. Well, the police was socialist, everything was socialist, we were doing all kinds of stuff. We were among the first people to go up on the hills and establish Jewish settlements. I mean, I'm enemy number one. And my wife, I had just met her, she was my girlfriend, she got a job in the Israeli TV in Arabic, but she was telling all the photographers of the TV to come to take movies of me. If we had time, I'd show you the pictures from Temple Mount and handcuffs and stuff that I was involved in. And I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was, part of the excitement to do these things. I couldn't understand why Moshe Dayan and Golda Meir, all these people, they were socialists. And I was hearing all these terrible things about the stupidity of the socialists, how they do everything backwards, like Russia. I kept saying, this is Russia, this is Russia, this is Russia. Then came the 6-Day War. And not the 6-Day War, the Yom Kippur War in 1973. And everybody was talking about the concept. There was a concept that Egypt would never dare to attack us. Syria would never dare to attack us. We looked down on them because our military victory in 1967 was so spectacular. And they attacked us. And they caught us with our pants down. What happened now I'm getting to nowadays. October 7th, 50 years later, they caught us with our pants down. The information was there, but the generals refused to see it. So now they blame Netanyahu, but Netanyahu was only doing what the generals were telling him. I mean, you have a ladder of power. You can't go against the generals because generals know everything, but the generals don't know anything. And today, the chief of staff fired the best general in the Israeli army because they don't like him, because he's different. There isn't one scandal. There were, in West Point, demerits. This guy had no demerits. And maybe a week ago on TV, they were interviewing a left-wing journalist who was saying, we have to kill 50,000 Jewish settlers in Judea and Samaria in order to teach them a lesson, withdraw from the territories, and create a Palestinian state. This is Biden.
That's madness.
This is Biden's plan, and all the top generals who know English in the Israeli army, they are trained in Washington. And their loyalty is not to Israel, their loyalty is to Washington.
Wow.
And I really beg of all of you to pray for Netanyahu.
Absolutely.
Because Netanyahu is the best prime minister we ever had.
Amen.
I don't think, he's younger than I am. I don't think I would have the ability or the strength or the health to withstand the brutal punishment that Netanyahu has with these socialists. Just a year ago, our 64-member coalition, which is the majority, wanted to change the monopoly of the socialist communists in the Supreme Court in Israel. And there were riots in the streets of Israel, paid for by Soros and all the left-wing people.
Yes.
So Hamas sees this, says, these stupid Jews are fighting each other, it's time for us to attack. And I'm going to say something, you're taping this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to say something which is a horrible thing to say. That the October 7th attack by Hamas was a gift from God.
Yes.
Because we are on the verge of a civil war. And you know what? We still are on the verge of a civil war. So the next stage is God is going to bless us with a war with Lebanon and Hezbollah. We are going to lose thousands of Israeli soldiers and citizens because they're going to rain 150,000 rockets on us. And Biden is standing back saying, I'm not going to give you guys any more weapons. Because Biden's plan is the Palestinian state. And at our narrowest point, that whole blue area is 9 miles. Planes will not be able to take off from Ben Gurion Airport if there's a Palestinian state. They are now finding tunnels under the ground between the West Bank villages and Jewish villages and settlements. You know, I want to tell you something. I felt all 35 years that God created me to speak in churches. I mean, can you imagine a Jew going to Christian churches and speaking about Israel? And like, this was my life for 35 years. I wrote 7 books. I'm working on my 8th book now. My 8th book, by the way, is about Turkey and the Armageddon. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, and I mean, if you give me another 3 hours, we'll talk about Turkey also.
Yes.
But
Right?
yeah, but and all of a sudden, I have to cancel my air ticket to the States in last October. See, stupid gun. I go to the bathroom with my gun. That's how crazy it is. Because we have a little community. It's true we're a fenced-in community. They can cut through that fence. Even it's electrified and there's cement walls, and we're surrounded by 100,000 Arabs. And we know that something is about to happen. What happened in Gaza and all these kibbutzim just around Gaza, it's going to happen to us. I cannot go to the States. Aaron cannot go to the States. My son Yaakov lives near Tel Aviv, but where he lives, there are tunnels.
Wow.
He's right near Kfar Saba. Kfar Saba also is being threatened now with infiltration of terrorist attacks. So we haven't seen anything yet. Gaza was a foretaste. The good news, you know, when we were little kids in America, I think maybe in England, pick up sticks. Gaza was the easiest of the pickup sticks. You know, we were in Gaza 4 times. And each time we left Gaza hoping there would be a good solution. And each time we had to come back. Arik Sharon in 2006 said, "Here are the keys," to the Palestinian Authority. Just don't shoot missiles at us. The first thing they did was to shoot missiles at us. You know, insanity is when you keep making the same mistake over and over again, thinking the result will be different. By the way, who was the guarantor? United States.
Yeah.
United States said, if you withdraw from Gaza, we'll make sure to it Gaza won't do any of these things. The United States keeps promising things and it keeps lying. I love America. I mean, I was born in America. I'm an American. My mentality is American. Maybe my mentality is more Christian than it is Jewish. People many say, "He's really a Christian." I say, hey, Christianity is Judaism. It just took off in a slightly different direction. Forgive me for saying it, because some people think, oh, it's completely different. No, it's not completely different. We didn't want to go back to Gaza. Gaza, I've done army service there, patrols. They're so crazy, these Arabs. They won't allow for sewers. So when they flush the toilet, it goes straight into the street. And our Jeeps are rectangular, cubic. So when you drive, it creates a vacuum and brings all the number 1 and number 2 into. So we're constantly covered with this crap. So we didn't want Gaza. All the reports we were receiving until October 7th were that Hamas is deterred. Hamas is receiving all this money from Qatar, from Israel, from Biden. And they built hundreds and hundreds of miles of tunnels with only one purpose, to kill the Jews. This Nova party was not supposed to be there. It was supposed to be in Tel Aviv. For some reason, they changed it over to the Gaza border wall. And I'm telling you right now, the U.S. knew about the attack. Egypt knew about the attack. And the Israeli generals knew about the attack. Because what was important to everyone was the overthrow of Netanyahu. The problem was that because the socialist kibbutzim were attacked, all of a sudden the socialists say, what have we done? And the 300 pilots who signed a paper that they would not serve in the Air Force, they're all socialists. You cannot be a pilot in the Israeli Air Force if you're not a socialist. You are screened, you are filtered. So the good news, the way I look at it, God's word is that Gaza is part of Israel. And we have it. We don't want it, but we have it. And we will have a military administration, occupation administration there for at least a year, 2-3 years. You know, Winston Churchill once said, I don't know if you remember, they're saying, you know, bombing of Dresden, you're killing innocent people. You're killing good Germans. And Winston Churchill said there are no good Germans. You probably remember that. At the end of World War II, Germany was divided up between the French, Americans, and the Brits. We burned all their books because all of the Nazi books had to be burned. And all of the education had to be cleansed. Look at Germany today. Germany is the most important ally of the United States, maybe after Britain. But Germany is democratic, and it's Japan. The US dropped 2 atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, that's horrible. But America would have lost 500,000 soldiers on a main ground line invasion. So when people ask me, well, don't you hate the Germans anymore? I said, I never hated the Germans. The Germans were our friends in Poland 100 years ago when my grandparents were there. The Russians were the enemy. You know, history is crazy because people are changing sides all the time. So now we go into the future. Lebanon. We've been in Lebanon 4 or 5 times already. And we had a prime minister who was a complete jerk, Ehud Barak, who withdrew from the South Lebanon self-defense area. I was in the home of Christian officers of the SLA, you know, there. He abandoned the allies, abandoned the territory. So what does Hezbollah do? They come all the way up to the wall. Now our people have to leave their homes. Do you have any doubt about Israel going into South Lebanon?
No.
It'll be the 4th, 5th time. And this time we annex it. And where does it say so? In the Bible. Mm-hmm. Gaza is Israel. Tyre, or Tsur in Hebrew, is Israel. Mm-hmm. And it says in Deuteronomy and Joshua, you know, from Lebanon to the desert. What's the desert? Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
We're going to get to Saudi Arabia. Wow. This is going to be the best message you ever got from me, let me tell you. So our map is growing according to God's plan. Yeah. You know what my worst enemy is? The Jewish mother. Mm. The Jewish mother wants her kids close to home for Friday night Shabbat dinner. In Florida, you have all these retirement homes, and they say, you know, the Jewish people say, we want our kids a golf cart's drive away. You know, golf cart is, you go like 5-minute drive, that's about it. Jewish mothers, what's the difference between Doberman pinchers and Jewish mothers? The Doberman pinscher eventually lets go. Let me tell you, I have a joke for every circumstance. There's a reason they don't have me in the synagogues, because the rabbi would be fired by the Jewish mothers. I knew this was going to be long. Okay. You know what? Let's go to Saudi Arabia now. So you see the map. Gaza, down here, which is part of Israel, is going to be re-annexed. Lebanon, south of Lebanon, re-annexed. And I'm weighing with a little time left what I should say, but Jim and Penny Caldwell played a very important role in my life because they opened my eyes to something that I never saw before. And I've got problems with the rabbis today. Jim and Penny don't say this. You know the Jewish men, they have the phylacteries on their foreheads, on the arm and on the forehead. And I say, well, that's the Kaaba in Mecca. So the rabbi said, are you saying we're Muslim? I'm not saying we're Muslim. I'm saying we were all pagans once. And the black stone was part of it. And I love King James, but there's a mistranslation there. In the beginning of the book of Exodus, Moses says to Pharaoh, let my people go so that they may go around in circles in the desert. King James says so that they may celebrate the Lord in the desert. Now, you know, in Spanish, you know, Joseph is Jose. In American, it's Jose. Like, no way, Jose. Everyone laughs, but it's the same word, the same letter. So in Hebrew, how do you say happy holiday? Chag Sameach. Chag, how do you say somebody who goes to Mecca as a Muslim pilgrim? Hajj. But in Egyptian Arabic, it's Hag. So I'm married to an Egyptian woman. I know Arabic, at least enough to understand what's going on. There's so much stuff there that nobody wants to talk about. We don't want to uncover the pagan origins of Judaism. And one of the things that really opened my eyes was that when I was in seminary, I was in seminary to become a conservative rabbi, but they threw me out because I opposed homosexual ordination. To be a rabbi, priest, or pastor, you have to follow the book. And this is a capital offense. Threw me out of seminary. And they had a few other reasons also, because I'm a big smartass. And I said to the guy who was in charge of the whole seminary, I ranked him out in front of everybody else. I said, when did God first command us to put on phylacteries? He said, oh, that was at Mount Sinai at the giving of the Torah. I said, no, sir. This is what destroyed me in seminary. Moses was tending the sheep of Jethro when he came to the burning bush. Then he went to Pharaoh. He said, let my people go so that they may go around in circles in the desert, meaning going around the black stone, Kaaba. Because you had two religions. You had the pyramid, which is slavery, and you had the cube, which is freedom in the desert. This is in my yellow book. I'm not trying to turn this into an advertisement. This is my life. All these things, I discover them and I write about them, and there's nobody who disagrees with me. Nobody stands up to. I have to tell you, today I got the secretary of the Bible Block Party, my good friend, he's from Holland, class, and he sent me a clip. I can show it to you if you want to see it afterwards, where he says, you have a lot of enemies, because I was talking about purifying Mecca of all the paganism there, because the black stone is paganism.
Yes.
But Jews and Christians, when they say my rock, my redeemer, and if you look at Samuel, it says that God is greater than any other rock, because that rock was like God, you know, it was a religion. And in Egypt, it was the pyramid. Okay, I don't want to get too much into it, but it was Jim and Penny Caldwell who got me started in this direction. Anyway. I don't know if you heard this in the news yesterday, you probably didn't, but the entourage of Mohammed bin Salman, he's the regent, was attacked. The whole convoy was blown up and he came out without being killed.
Did they ever figure out who was behind it? One of his brothers inside?
All you have to do is take a few guesses. It's Iran, Qatar, and all the conservatives who say, what is this guy doing by turning the real Mount Sinai into Disney World? The land is being defiled. Saudi Arabia is being defiled by this whole idea of Jews and Christians coming in. He's going to be killed for trying to open up the kingdom. I've been saying this in churches now for a couple of years. So ISIS is going to take Saudi Arabia. That's going to be a big goof off for Biden. Forget about the oil of Saudi Arabia.
Is ISIS Sunni?
ISIS is the crazy Sunni Muslims.
Yeah, okay.
They're going to kill the royal family. They're going to kill, well, the royal family is 8% of the population. 92% support ISIS. Then they're going to go to Jordan, kill King Abdullah and his whole family. Everybody hates King Abdullah in Jordan. Jordan's going to become ISIS. I mean, the caliphate is going to grow all around Israel like a giant cancer. So Gaza, Lebanon, Saudi, Jordan. And what's the problem? Syria, which is our enemy now, but they are led by a Shiite government, led by Iran. This is petty cash. This is nothing. Because when the ISIS caliphate comes back, it's the Sunnis are 85% of the Muslims, and the Shiites are only 15%. I mean, nobody's looking at the big picture.
Right.
And I'm going to try to wrap up with this now. I didn't even talk about the Bible Bloc Party, which is also another 3 hours. You have in Syria and Lebanon and Israel and Jordan, you have Druze communities. Have you heard of the Druze?
Yes.
It's a pleasure talking to people who understand the terminology, because I go to some churches and people are like, like their eyes glaze over, The Druze in Syria live primarily on the mountain of the Druze in the south of Syria, and it's on the Jordanian border. And if you look at the map, it says Sawaida. Sawaida is the name of the area. And the mountain was surrounded 10 years ago by ISIS. They were going to kill all the Druze. So the Druze in the Israeli army came to Netanyahu and said, listen, either invade Syria to the east, annex the south of Syria, which is Mount Jebel Druze and Suwaida. Otherwise, let the Druze go armed into Syria to defend our brethren. Druze are like Jews. They're a small group and they're very fierce about defending themselves. Netanyahu didn't want to invade Syria. I mean, what did he do? He flew to Moscow. The Russians invaded Syria. The Russian forces in Syria were there to protect the Bashar al-Assad regime, the Druze, the Christians, the Kurds, the Zahidis. I mean, this is a brilliant move by Netanyahu to convince Putin. They're friends.
Yeah.
To convince the Russians to go in to save the Christians. We will have to go in now. If the Russians pull out of Syria, we will have to go into Syria and Lebanon. So the whole map is going to change. Everything is upside down. Blinken, I feel like saying something bad. Blinken and Binken and Biden and
Winken and Blinken.
they are all completely psychotic. They are living in castles in the air. You know the joke about psychosis. If you want, I'll tell you the joke, but we're running out of time. So now I want to talk about Egypt. Is Egypt a friend of Israel? Now, my wife says no. I say, well, but you know what? We made peace with them. We gave them Sinai 3 times. And you know what? Our population grew from 3 million to, we're almost 10 million people. You need peace for the population to grow. But what happened was, an Egyptian officer, I don't want to say he defected, but he's not in Egypt anymore. He's, I think, in America with a lot of money. He told the Israelis that he personally built 4 major tunnels from Egypt into Rafah. And trucks go in and out. There's a big business going on there. And a lot of officers in the Egyptian army are making a lot of money. That's why the Egyptians don't want Israel to go into Rafah. A lot of weapons are going from Iran to Sudan, from Sudan into Egypt, Sinai, and then into Israel. So, I once had a fight A beautiful fight. You know Christine Darg? You don't know Christine Darg? You need to meet her because she's a Christian globetrotter.
Where is she?
Her husband is English, Peter Darg, but they live, I think, in Virginia primarily. I'll put you guys in contact because. So one day she was in Israel, says, I am going to lead a group of Christian women to Egypt, and we're going to, witness to the Muslim women. They're good Christian women, a sound theology. And she says then, Isaiah 19. Isaiah 19 is the highway between Assyria and Egypt. Avi, what do you think about that? I said, well, what about Ezekiel 29? Avi, don't start with me. that was our fight. We just say quotes. Do you know what Ezekiel 29 is?
Well, it's the follow-up to 28, so it's like
Okay, I'm teaching you Bible now.
It's the polemic against Pharaoh, king of Egypt.
Exactly. It's not just the polemic. It says in Ezekiel, the last verse of Ezekiel 28 and Ezekiel 29, it says there is going to be a great desolation in Egypt, and no human and no animal will tread in the land for 40 years. And it says it's going to happen all the way from Aswan, ding dong, Aswan, to Migdol on the Mediterranean. I once got court-martialed by the Israeli army for quoting two Egyptian ministers of war who were saying that war with Israel is inevitable and Egypt is ready. And the other one was saying, even though Israel has nuclear weapons, we will know how to cut off the arm of the enemy when the time comes. So I got court-martialed for talking about nuclear weapons. I said, I wasn't talking, Stan Goodenough or not? He worked at the Christian embassy. I know more Christians than you do.
You do?
Yeah, and praise God. And because he was quoting these people, I was quoting him. When the Arab Spring broke out in 2011, they were saying that Egypt was going to go, because they're Sunnis, get into the civil war in Syria to protect the Sunnis from Bashar al-Assad and the Shiites. So Iran, which is Shiite, said, we're going to nuke the Aswan Dam. Now what happens when you nuke the Aswan Dam? All the water in Lake Nasser is going to flood Cairo, and you don't need a nuclear explosion there. All you need is an earthquake. That dam can go. If God decides, that dam goes. And the Egyptians, some will die. But it doesn't say in the Bible they will die. It says they will, be scattered to the four corners of the earth because of the desolation. Because Pharaoh said he was God. So you can say Pharaoh said but yeah. Now, if 100 million Egyptians are up on those heights overlooking the river, I mean, this is like a Cecil B. DeMille movie, 10 Commandments, the flooding. 100 million, live real, God bless you, 100 million Egyptians. What country in the world do you know will take in most of these refugees?
United States.
United States. Because the United States is empty. From the Mississippi west, there's plenty of room. And there's a lot of money involved to save the Egyptians.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
Bill Gates has been buying up fund.
Yeah.
and you have to remember, 40 years, and then they go home to Egypt, to a lowly, destroyed kingdom. This is in the Bible. I'm not making this up. So I'm being attacked. It's in the phone here. When we finish taping, I'll let you see it. Our borders are going to go from the Nile to the Euphrates, whether we like it or not. Because that's God's plan. It's not Avi Lipkin's plan.
Amen.
What we want is leave us alone. We just want to have a nice, happy life here in Israel. But God is saying, your population will not be 10 million. Israel's population will grow to 20, 30, 40 million people. And we're going to need the Christians to come and settle here in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Syria, in Lebanon, and Sinai Peninsula. Arabic will not be the language anymore because you're going to have English speakers and others. Everything's going to be crazy. And we Jews and Christians together are going to turn the desert green. Because wherever the Christians and Jews go, it's green. Mm-hmm. And wherever the Muslims go, it's yellow. Yeah. Desolation. Am I a fascist? Am I a racist against anyone? I'm just saying this is what I think God is saying. God says in Genesis, tend my garden. We're commanded to tend his garden. Do I hate the Muslims? No. You know, I always say in the churches, bring them to the Lord or they'll bring you to the sword.
Yes.
Because their God is the sword.
Yes.
I don't hate the Muslims.
Neither does God. Nope.
Neither does God. And one of the things I want to say, which I need really an hour, but I'm going to do it in just a few minutes. I've been in the States now 35 years monitoring the Islamic invasion of America. And they use their money. It's all planned. Mm-hmm. And my wife has been monitoring their conferences. The whole world is divided up into the Islamic wealth. And universities get money. Mm-hmm. And in return, they give visas. 500 visas a year per university. Multiply that times 1,000 universities. You have 500,000 Muslims coming into the United States every year. You know, I was in, I don't know if any of you have been in Vancouver, Canada. Mm-hmm. So there's an island, Vancouver Island, and when you go over on the Horseshoe Bay ferry, there's a town there called Comox. Did you ever hear of Comox?
I've heard of it, I've not been there.
I've got a Christian family there, and they always invite me. They fill the house up when I come to speak. Mm-hmm. They say the university in Comox is full of Muslims, and they're taking over all the women. And they make children with the women. The women convert, the children are Muslim. Mm-hmm. And then they have chain immigration. This is what Trump was saying, chain immigration. And nobody dares to talk about it because the agenda is you cannot talk about Islam or Islamic invasion of United States. Or I know what's going on in Latin America. I know what's going on in Canada and England, because in England there's a problem also. I have a friend a very dear friend in Cambridge. Is it Cambridge or Oxford? One of these university towns on the north side. And every time I take a taxi, it's a Pakistani. And I'm very careful how I talk, that they shouldn't, kill me. Nobody knows who I am, but people look at me, it's like I'm kind of known, Mm. So I'm now updating my fourth book, the blue book. I'm updating it almost double the size. There's so much new information. The fourth book is about the Bible Block Party, which I haven't even spoken about yet. But the size, which is growing, is the war in the October 7th, but it's also the Islamic takeover by Hijra. Hijra is immigration. And this is like something that really cannot be stopped unless the Christians wake up and do what Christians have to do. I don't mean to be mean or these people want to come to a Christian country, they have to be Christian. Or if they don't want to be Christian, they have to at least be respectful of the Christians and not say, oh, we're bringing Allahu Akbar everywhere. And in Israel, we have to be the same way. You're in the one and only Jewish state. You cannot continue with this crazy behavior of Allahu Akbar. So all I can say in conclusion is I go to bed very, very well at night because I know God is going to do what God's going to do. Christians always say, oh, Avi, how should we pray? I say pray that God's will be done on earth, God's will be done on earth as in heaven. That's all, because God knows what he's doing. We don't know what we're doing. We can try our best to help out in whichever way we can. I've been trying for 20 years to create a Judeo-Christian party And finally, 5 years ago, the party was registered. We ran in 5 elections. And, but people still say, who is this crazy guy? And my son Aaron says to me, Daddy, you're a prophet, but you're 300 years before your time. And, but think for a moment, if 10, 20, there are 6 million Jews, 8 million Jews outside of Israel. But if 20 million, 30 million, 40 million people want to make Aliyah, and they're all connected to the Jews in different ways, we need a party of Jews and Christians marching together. So I think it's a question of when, not if, and inevitable. And I don't even know if I'll be alive at the time, but I think it's going to happen. It's all in the book. You know, I'm doing everything I can. And I'm saying when God wants to take me, he'll take me. And I don't care, because I've done whatever I could, and it was like hitting a wall. I'm constantly hitting a wall. And God says, oh, shut up and stop complaining. That's how God talks to me. He says, I really don't want you. You know, I will take you when I want you. I don't want you yet. That's how I talk to God, you know. And my wife says, shut up and do the dishes. You know, so. And I have the last word. Yes, dear. How much, dear? Cash or credit, dear? And it's great to talk to all of you, and I'm glad that we got some of the message out. I don't know, how much time do we have if people want to do a Q&A?
We are running pretty low now. We're down about 20% on the battery here. So we could do maybe a couple,
Just a few questions. Is there anyone, I know you have a lot to ask about Saudi and all that, but.
Come on, take it back.
I'll be back. I'm just going to.
By the way, one thing I will say in response to what you said about Galatians 1.
It's 425.
425. It says Mount Sinai, which is in Arabia.
Yes.
And one of my favorite teachings in the church, which is a Jewish teaching, is 1 Kings chapter 19. 1 Kings chapter 19, I get lots of laughs. I have this thing really polished. I always say Elijah, the prophet, is the only one left because Hillary killed all the others.
No.
And, you know, sometimes people fall asleep when it gets too long, you know. So Elijah makes it to Beersheba, and one day out of Beersheba, heading south, and he's tired, he falls asleep, probably dehydrated. I mean, that's the kind of weather we have here. You think you want to sleep, but you're just dehydrated. And an angel of the Lord brings him water and food and wakes him, rouses him. Eat and drink. You have a long way to go. So he eats and drinks, goes back to sleep. Because dehydrated. Gives him more water and drink and says, you have a long way to go. 40 days and 40 nights until you reach Mount Horeb. Horeb is another name for Mount Sinai. Now, why is Elijah the prophet going to Mount Sinai? The rabbis never talk about it. He's going to the cave. He's going to the cave, the same cave where the Apostle Paul went 1,000 years later. Now, what's the Apostle? I'm getting to something which I really shouldn't get into. The Apostle Paul, after his Damascus Road revelation, why doesn't he go to Jerusalem to speak to the apostles? He goes to Arabia. What's he doing in Arabia? He's going to the cave where Elijah was. I mean, nobody talks about these things. And really, I thank God that I met Jim and Penny. You know, I have to tell you the story how I met them. I know we have a few minutes. We're almost finished with the message. One day I'm speaking in Florida, in the Panhandle, and they show up at the church. I said, where are you sleeping tonight? And I said, I don't know. You know, because when I'm on the road, I just, when I get tired, I stop at a hotel, you know, because I'm driving. No, you're going to sleep at my house, at our house. This was in already in, what's the name of the town? Diamond Head.
Diamond Head.
It's 2 hours. And I said, leave me alone. I want to go. No, 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 you're coming to our house. You're going to see a movie. Oh, you Christians, you're always making me see these missionary movies. No, 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 no. This is going to change your life. So I got to their house. I said, I'm sorry. I'm going to bed, and tomorrow I'm leaving early because I have to go to Texas. Must have been about 15 years ago. A long time ago. And they said, when are you coming back? I said, 2 months. We will catch you on the rebound. And they went to New Orleans, They bought me kosher steaks, and they did a barbecue for me with kosher meat. Because I can't eat meat unless it's kosher. But they went to all that effort to bring kosher meat. Now you're going to see the movie. And I was all over the floor. I mean, I was flabbergasted.
Was it the Mountain Fire?
Yeah. A long time.
The best portion of that whole entire thing.
Yeah.
Tell them about what they have.
Do you guys all know who Jim and Penny are?
Yeah.
Okay, so no need. And we were there. We were there at Mount Sinai. Everything is there. All the proof is there. You ask the rabbis, where was the Exodus? Duh, we don't know. I mean, rabbis, you're smart. You go to yeshiva, you study Talmud. What? It's not in the Talmud. We don't touch it. Do you realize what I have to deal with? Because this is the kingpin to the whole picture of what's going on today.
Why study the Talmud if they don't study the Torah?
There's a song that we used to sing in the youth movement, Mefortu, Mefortu, Mushteta Fanort, which means they run and they run and they run and they're going around in circles. So this whole thing is very multidisciplinary. You've got to talk about Egypt, you've got to talk about Saudi, you've got to talk about Yemen. Do you know how far Yemen is from Mecca?
Long way.
Where the Houthis? No, 8-hour drive. Look at the map.
Yeah.
8-hour drive, it's not
I'm
far.
thinking in terms of, 3,000 years ago, having to walk it.
No, in those days everybody walked everywhere. People walked like crazy. There was no other way to get around. You walked.
Right.
Moses walked, and Jethro walked, and everyone walked.
Elijah ran.
And just a little pointer. What are the two cities of Islam? Mecca and Medina.
Yeah.
Medina has another name. The real name of Medina is Yathrib.
Yeah, Yathrib.
Yathrib is Jethro.
Jethro.
Oh,
Because Jethro lived in Yathrib. This was his town. He was the high priest of Midian.
yes.
And Moses lived with him. And so this whole thing with the phylacteries was way before we left Egypt. He saw the burning bush. God told him about the phylacteries. Go to Pharaoh, tell him not to mess. And Pharaoh decided to mess. This is what my wife said to me today. What are you concerned about? God is in control. My wife. Biden wants to mess. There's a reason God is making Biden's heart stubborn.
You will find out.
He will find out. And anyway, all I can say is that I'm very glad to be alive at this time because we are all witnesses to what God is doing. And, we're talking about the Messiah, and that's not far away. Because as Israel's borders grow, and as Jews and Christians come home to the land of Israel, hopefully we'll all still be alive when the Messiah shows. He's going to show when we have prepared, when we have done our homework. Listen, people can believe, rabbis believe in things which I don't accept. I don't love the rabbis. Of course I love the rabbis. I love every Christian. Because I'm a Jew, I love every Christian. I love every Jew. I even love my mother-in-law. Rest in peace, she's not around anymore. She always took my side in debates with my wife. So listen, life is a laugh. But if your heart is good and your heart is with God, you have nothing to worry about. And that's my message.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Avi.
Check the notes below this program, whether you're watching or listening, for a link to Avi Lipkin's website. You can get his books there, his teachings, and again, his firsthand experience and his study of history runs counter to the official narrative. But that's why we went to Israel back in May, to see things with our own eyes. And as of now, we are still prepared to go forward. In November, God willing, we'll talk about some of the possible obstacles to that, and a conference where we hope we see you in December. Yes, Christmas in Branson and Bible prophecy as well. That and more straight ahead as A View from the Bunker continues.
Giants, gods, dragons, they're all real. We may not see them with our natural eyes, but their handiwork is evident in what's happening in the world around us, the spiritual warfare taking place.
It is so true. It's obvious in Israel, but worldwide. Historically, we've seen this happen. And we want you to get excited about the Old Testament and the New, and the giants, gods, and dragons within it, because your kids need this information. So do you.
Yes. We're living in prophetic times. Help make sense of it with our special offer through July. Our book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, which takes a fresh look at end times prophecy. My book's Bad Moon Rising, about the spiritual forces behind Islam. And Last Clash of the Titans, the overlap between what we were told is Greek mythology and the Bible. And our DVD, based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. All of this, an $80 value for just $45 plus shipping and handling, now through July, only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store.
Walking the walk every Sunday night from the crossroads of the Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online at VFTB.net. That's where all of our archives are. You'll also find us at gilberthouse.org. That's the web hub for everything that Sharon and I do. Links to Unraveling Revelation, Sci Friday, and guess what? The Bible's Greatest Mysteries is coming back. We don't have a set date yet, but it is in the works. That and more, my personal website, DerekPGilbert.com. On social media, X, formerly Twitter, at ViewFromBunker, at Derek Gilbert, at GilbertHouse_TV. You'll also find us on Truth Social, Gab Me We Getter, Threads, also on Facebook, and, of course, YouTube, at Gilbert House. And if you are there, please subscribe, click the bell for notifications, hit the like button, and then please download our free app, because that guarantees we never get canceled at some point. This is one of those programs that's likely to do it. You will find that we've said something that gets us kicked out of the sandbox. So please download our app to make sure that you always have access to all of our video and audio content. We've also got a wonderful little messaging area there where you can exchange notes, ask questions of Sharon and me, ask for prayer, offer prayer to others, and more. It is free, available for iOS, Android, and Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets. We've got a link at our website, gilberthouse.org/app. We've also got versions for Roku and Apple TV. The Fire TV version, we are told, is still in the works. For some reason, Amazon is being very slow about approving the app. We've got all the stuff in there that they need. The code is written. They just need to approve it, give it the go-ahead. And we're waiting for this because we've got several Fire TVs. Roku TVs as well. We got the app there. We can check and make sure everything is fine there, but we'd like to get the Fire TV app. That is still forthcoming. But in the meanwhile, get us on your mobile device. gilberthouse.org/app. You'll also find a link at VFTB.net. Well, going to bypass bless their pointy little heads this week. I know it's a way to just say, hey, look, let's not take everything so seriously, because God's got this. There's not a day that goes by where he slaps himself in the forehead and says, boy, I didn't see that coming. It's words of wisdom from our friend Pastor Carl Gallups, which he issued on the morning the results were announced of the 2020 election. But the same holds true regardless of what's in the news. And this week, the landscape of the Middle East changed in a radical way as Israel, in the span of 12 hours, Monday and Tuesday, took out the number 2 man in Hezbollah in a strike in Beirut. And then, according to the New York Times now, this apparently was a remote detonated bomb that had been smuggled into a guest house owned and operated by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. They're sort of like the Praetorian Guard around Ayatollah Khamenei in Tehran. and it was used to take out the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh. And remember, just 2 weeks ago, Israel took out the military leader of Hamas in Gaza in an airstrike. So Mohammed Def, gone. Ismail Haniyeh, gone. Fuad Shukr, the Hezbollah number 2 man, right-hand man to the Hassan Nasrallah, all within a week. These were the commanders of the proxies that Iran is using to wage war against Israel. So as of this recording, it was midday Thursday, so this is a couple of days ahead of when you are seeing or hearing this, and this may be obsolete information, out-of-date information by the time you get it, but we will see how things progress. Now, a number of airlines, including the two of the biggest here in the United States, United and Delta, which fly to Tel Aviv, have canceled flights to Tel Aviv for the foreseeable future. A number of others, including Lufthansa, Fly Dubai, and others, are also canceling flights into Tel Aviv as of this recording because of the fear that war with Iran and its proxies is imminent. So how this affects the Middle East is hard to foresee, because when Iran launched that strike against Israel, the 300 drones and missiles that were fired a couple of months back, did not see Jordan taking down drones crossing its airspace on the bingo card. So Sunni powers may not, they may show more support for Israel than you would expect. Don't know. Bear in mind that Jordan is ruled by the lone surviving branch of the royal family that claims to direct linear descent from Muhammad. That's where the word Hashemite comes from, the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. I just learned this over the last couple of months and finally trying to educate myself as to the history of what's going on in the Middle East. The Hashemites were the family that from which Muhammad came. Hashem, which, by the way, in Hebrew means the name, and that's how Jews refer to Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the name, Hashem. That was apparently the name of Muhammad's grandfather. So Muhammad in the 7th century, 2 generations before that, Hashem founded the house of the Hashemites. About 100 years ago, when the British and the French were carving up Mesopotamia, the former holdings of the Ottoman Empire in the Levant and Mesopotamia, the Brits had aligned themselves with the head of the Hashemite house. This was Sharif Hussein, who ruled in Mecca. He had 3 sons. Ali, who succeeded him as the king of Mecca for a very short period of time. His second son, Abdullah, who became the first king of Jordan. And a third son, Faisal, who became the first king of Iraq. Now, the Iraqi branch of the family was overthrown in a military coup in the 1950s. Sharif Ali, his son, or Sharif Hussein's son Ali, who became the Sharif Ali, was defeated in battle by another Arab chieftain by the name of Ibn Saud, from whom we get the name Saudi Arabia. And that was done with the backing of a rogue MI6 agent named Jack Philby, properly St. John Philby, but Jack, the Arabs to this day call him Abdullah Philby, because he converted to Islam at the age of 45, got circumcised and everything. He fed intelligence from the British government, from MI6, to Ibn Saud to help him defeat Ali and take Mecca for himself. This happened in 1925. That's why Arabia in 1932 became Saudi Arabia. Saudi is not an ethnicity, it's the name of the family that rules the country. So, the Hashemites still rule in Jordan. King Abdullah, who's reigned there since 1999, as the descendant of Muhammad, may see a war between Israel on his western border and Iran on his eastern border as unacceptable. We will see how this all plays out. But until we say otherwise, we are still returning in November, and I'll talk about that in just a few moments. The other conferences to tell you about, the Go Therefore conference, by the way, just concluded last weekend in Brookville, Ohio, just outside Dayton. Pastor Neil Peterson and his team at Harvest Revival Church provided a wonderful facility for it, and their tech team, fantastic. The videos were live streamed. They did have one glitch on Saturday, sadly, that interrupted Sharon's presentation on the live stream, but that is being fixed. That will be uploaded, and by the time you're seeing this or hearing this, that may already have been fixed. But I'll tell you what, if you didn't sign up, if you weren't there and you didn't sign up for the streaming video, I encourage you to do so now, because Joe Horn's presentation alone worth the price of admission. Of course, L.A. Marzulli also presented there, Pastor Carl Gallups, Dr. Greg Reed, my talk, which is sort of an expanded version of the brief little bit of history I just gave you, which led to, how did Israel become a nation in 1948? You might find that of some interest. But Joe Horn's presentation alone is worth the price of admission. He basically explains why we do what we do at Skywatch TV and the mission of Whispering Ponies Ranch. There's a forthcoming docuseries called Rescue Us from Skywatch TV. Joe incorporated some of the video from that in his presentation. And just word of warning, have tissues handy when you're watching, because it is powerful. You can find out more and sign up to get that streaming video package at gothereforconference.com. And again, I encourage you to do it. The Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering is next on our calendar. Sharon will be here working on her ninth novel in the Red Wing Saga series called Queen Sacrifice. But I'll be going to Valley City, North Dakota, myself, September 6th and 7th, and I'll be joined there now by Dr. Doug Hamp. Doug Hamp has been added as a speaker, and so the two of us will be sharing on a couple of days there. And looking forward to seeing Doug face-to-face. Been a while. My goodness, maybe since the last Sons of God, Giants of Old conference. Anyway, you can find out more. There is a Facebook page for the Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering. Admission to the event, I believe, is free. Essentially, the gathering itself is like a small conference, workshops, best practices for small farmers and homesteaders, and then a couple of fringe Christians talking about stuff that we find interesting. So I hope you can join us. Valley City, North Dakota, that's about halfway between Jamestown and Fargo. You can fly into Fargo. It's about an hour west of there as the crow flies. And again, more information at our website, gilberthouse.org. Look under the calendar section. Look in the calendar section of our app, or find the Facebook page for the Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering. The Ignite Your Fire Conference from Hear the Watchman, that rather than being an in-person conference in October, will now be a virtual conference. Hear the Watchman putting that on. We'll get more information on that in another week or so and update you on that. The Christmas in Branson Prophecy Conference, December 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Prophecy Watchers putting this on. So Gary Stearman, Mondo Gonzalez, Josh Peck will be there, along with L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salas, Ken Johnson, Billy Crone, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, and yours truly, among others. Prophecy Watchers always puts on a big conference, lots of speakers, so you will never lack for somebody that you want to hear from. So hopefully we can see you there. The information at prophecywatchers.com. Also, Christmas in Branson Prophecy Conference, or Branson Christmas Prophecy Conference. Well, go to our app, go to our website. It's a long URL, but we've got a link at our website and also on our app for where you can get more information. Now, November, we are still planning on another solidarity mission to Israel. This will be November 6th through 13th. Small group, 10, 12 people maybe. We will visit sites in the south that were attacked on October 7th last year, including the Nova Music Festival site, which has become sort of a memorial to the 364 people who died there, 120 others who were taken captive there. And more. We'll go to Tel Aviv, the Shiva Rehabilitation Center, visit with IDF soldiers who are recuperating. We'll go to Hostage Square and other sites. We are asking for Shiloh to be put on the schedule for the fall. So that we are told is a go. Shiloh, of course, is where the red heifers are being kept. By November, they would have been old enough to have been sacrificed if that is going to happen. So we'll find out more, but Shiloh tentatively on the schedule for November. Now, again, a lot of this depends on what happens in the next few days, what may already have happened by the time you watch this or hear this. as, again, major airlines are canceling flights until it appears that the threat of war has passed. But you can find out more information at gilberthouse.org/travel, gilberthouse.org/travel. And then next spring, God willing, we'll be back in the Holy Land with Timothy Alberino, Doug Van Dorn, and Dr. Judd Burton. The Iron and Myth Tour of Israel, next March 25th through April 3rd, with an optional 3-day extension to Jordan. Obviously, what happens between now and then in terms of war will have some bearing on the schedule. We've had to reschedule this already, and we may have to reschedule it again. But Lipkin Tours, God bless them, they're willing to be very flexible. They understand the situation, especially if major airlines are not willing to fly into Tel Aviv. It becomes difficult to tour Israel if you can't get to Israel, but we'll always have the latest information at gilberthouse.org/travel. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to watch or listen, wherever that may be. If you're watching on YouTube, again, subscribe, share, click the bell for notifications, and then download our free app. If you're listening, whether it's Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Audible, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, or wherever fine podcasts are sold, thank you. We appreciate a thumbs up, nice review if you have a spare moment or two. Our announcer, the inimitable D.C. Good. A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And good night, Oliver, wherever you are. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is A View from the Bunker.